Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're thrilled for you to be there. We really appreciate our listeners joining us. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, listening on your favorite podcast, watching us on SuperTalk TV, or listening on SuperTalk Radio, we really appreciate you joining us. We really appreciate the feedback that continues to be really, really good. As I said to a guest during the week this week, listeners want a positive show. So we really focused on positive. Unfortunately, today is Jeff Duncan Day. Not that Jeff is not positive, but the story around the Saints right now is quite challenging, and we're going to talk about the Saints. But before we do that, we're going to welcome my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. How you doing, Jeff?
Ricky, I'm doing great. Yeah, it's always better to talk to you after a win, but hey, it's the NFL. You never know week to week. It can turn around in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, there's just no doubt about that. Listen, one of the things I wanted to ask you about before we go any further, how is the book coming along? I know you guys are finishing up the manuscript now. Editors have been involved on the Steve Gleason incredible book that you've been working with him on for quite a while. How's that going?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. We're in the final revision phase right now. We have to turn the manuscript in Saturday, so we're trying to get to this finish line here on Saturday, and working really hard. The book comes out next April. As you know, it takes a while to publish a book. So even though we get the manuscript turned in, we'll still have another phase of revisions in December. And then it'll go to the printing press, and it'll be out of our hands for good in the spring. And it'll be on sale in April 30th at bookstores everywhere.
Well, good. I look forward to having more chats with you guys about the book as we get closer to the launch and potential, and I would assume absolute for sure book signings that will take place here in coastal Mississippi. And I look forward to helping you make that a success. Hey, let me check in with Kyle real quick. I noticed we got a frozen screen. Kyle, everything's cool. We're good still?
Yeah, just frozen on your end.
Okay, very good, very good. Kyle's on top of the game, man, as usual. Okay, man, I've been reading a lot. Everyone has their opinion, but the Saints are really struggling at this point in the game, aren't they?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that's been going on. That's why I didn't get too high last week when everyone was, throwing Mardi Gras parades after they won 2 games in a row. You know me, I'm always going to be down the middle, and this team, they're 5-5. They're pretty much what they are, I think, at this stage. I don't think there's going to be a lot that's going to change. But having said that, Ricky, I mean, they're still right in the mix for the division championship, and I think have the inside track to get it. They have to win this game, I think, in a couple weeks in Atlanta. But, you can sneak in the playoffs, and once you get in there, anything can happen. We've seen it happen over the years in the NFL. So I'm not ready to give up on them, but I think that the angst and the anxiety that we're hearing from the fans is because they know that this team really isn't that good, and they were expecting it to be a lot better. And so even if they get in the playoffs, I think most fans understand they're not a real contender. And I think that's where the disappointment and frustration is coming from.
You've seen, like for example, with Buffalo, I think they fired their offensive coordinator, and it created on some blogs a comparison between the Buffalo Bills offense and the Saints offense, and you start to really appreciate how the Saints are not doing well on offense in lots of ways, whether it be the screen pass, throwing to the middle of the field, lots of comparisons. They just can't seem to get this thing together and be creative. Is it leadership? Is it play calling, or is it all the above?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to say they need to fire Pete Carmichael. I know that's what a lot of fans want. They want, they want a head on a stake, right? And I'm not saying that I'm not defending Pete Carmichael, but when I watch the games on replay, and I watch every one of them 2 or 3 times, I see a lot of assignment errors. I see a lot of, pre-snap penalties, just a lot of sloppy mistakes that create difficult situations to be good on offense. And so I don't feel like it's one thing. I feel like it's a multitude of things. I actually think the biggest problem the Saints have is their quarterback play. In my opinion, it's not as good as it needs to be. It's not as good as everybody expected it to be. And that's not just Derek Carr, Jameis Winston as well. They don't have an elite quarterback or even a top top quarterback. I mean, if you look at the numbers for Derek Carr on paper, they look fairly good on paper, but when you dig into them, Ricky, look at the key situations of football, third down, red zone, he's like at the very bottom of the league. Now, I guess you could argue, well, if he had a better coordinator, maybe he'd be better. I'm not sure I buy that. He's playing worse in this offense than Andy Dalton did a year ago. So there's other quarterbacks that have been in this offense that have played well in it. And Derek Carr is not playing that well. And so to me, that's where it starts. He's got to play better. The coaches certainly have to find a way to make him play better, hold him accountable. But that, to me, is the biggest issue.
Well, I think a telltale sign of that is that when we get in the red zone, he's not typically involved in the offense the way that a leading quarterback would be. Now, I understand Taysom Hill is the right choice in that situation, but again, if we had better red zone performance, we wouldn't be going to the Taysom Hill package so often. There's just a lack of confidence in Carr when we get in the red zone. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, I think certainly it's a contributing factor there, but he's still not playing well on third down either. That's a key down in football, as you know. And look, last game, I heard so much criticism about the offense. Right? It was the offensive problems. That's what fans tend to notice, right? When you have the ball, they watch the offense. But to me, the breakdown was on defense. I mean, they gave up 24 points in the first half to a Vikings offense that was playing without most of their best players, including their top two quarterbacks. The quarterback just got on the team like 10 days ago. So, we expect the Saints defense to be elite. And they were going against a banged up Minnesota Vikings offense. They couldn't get off the field. So everyone keeps talking about, oh, Taysom Hill didn't get the ball enough or this. Let's look at offense. Well, they only had 22 plays in the first half. There's only so much you can do with 22 plays. Only so many balls you can spread around. Yes, the offense contributed to that by going 3 and out, but still the defense couldn't stop the Vikings offense to get the ball back to their offense. And we expected that with an elite defense.
Yeah, I turned toward my son Jordan, who I always watch the games with, and I said, it's not just that we can't defend a running quarterback, which is true. We can't defend a running quarterback. But what materialized in that game was literally backyard football. I mean, it was like we were getting beat by backyard football. So their plays would break down, and then we couldn't get pressure on the quarterback or whatever the situation might be, and we were just getting beat by improvising on the field. And we had a quarterback, obviously, in this particular case that could do it. And what was interesting, watching some of the communication that was taking place between the head coach of the Vikings and their quarterback. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos, but just terrific job of communicating and literally telling him what he's looking at and whatever. It was really, really good to watch. But man, we just had a tough when a play starts to break down and you've got a mobile quarterback, we fail a lot, don't we?
Well, I think they're going to have to make some adjustments, and I think they will. The coaching staff's been in the office all week, basically doing self-scouting. And I think what you're going to see, I mean, we've already seen one reaction, right? They signed Jason Pierre-Paul. I don't know how much he's going to help, but it is an indication they're not happy with the pass rush. At this stage where he's 34 and been out of football, I don't know how much they're going to get out of him. Frankly, he's on the practice squad, so he's going to help them with some depth. But it does tell you that they are concerned about the pass rush. I think they're going to have to start blitzing a little more to create pressure. They don't like to do that. That's not Dennis Allen's MO, but desperate times call for desperate measures. That could lead, though, to more big plays if they don't get home with the blitz. That's one thing that they, for the most part, have avoided. But they're going to have to make some adjustments because they've got 18 sacks right now, Ricky. That's, I think, the 5th lowest in the NFL.
Yeah, it just hasn't played out the way they hoped it would. You look on that one play when Marshawn Lattimore got his ankle caught, but at the time you didn't know what the injury was. It just, you saw his leg get kind of bent a weird way, and the way he immediately kind of walked off the field, I thought, he just tore something bad. Turns out that it's an ankle sprain. Do we have any sense of how bad it is?
No, just all we've heard is what Dennis Allen said. I mean, he called it fairly significant. I heard him on his coach's show this week say both he and Michael Thomas are expected to miss some time. What does that mean? I don't know. But I'd say it's unlikely that either one of them will play in this first game against the Falcons, just listening to the way Dennis Allen characterized. Michael Thomas, I've heard, has got a bone bruise. There's good news and bad news with that. There's no structural damage, so it's not a ligament, it's not a tendon or something. That's good news. But bone bruises can be very finicky. It just depends on how severe it is. Some players miss one game. Travis Kelce missed the opener this year for the Chiefs with a bone bruise in his knee. Some players miss 6 weeks. It just depends. So I'd say it's impossible to know how many games Mike Thomas, if any, he's going to miss, because they do get a bye week. That helps.
Well, we've seen some roster changes, so the Saints are making adjustments based on the injuries and maybe some other strategic adjustments that they're making. And we'll talk about some of these roster changes when we come back with Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have my friend Jeff Duncan with us from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. He is the man when it comes to sports in Louisiana, really. I mean, he's one of the top observers of sports in the nation. So, Jeff, when we went to break, we talked about, we're in a bye week. We've experienced some injuries. The two that we just talked about, to Michael Thomas and Marshawn Lattimore being the two big ones. But they've made some roster moves this week. So let's get into some of those changes.
Well, they did release fullback Adam Prentice. That was a little bit of a surprise after they just got him back. But I think that's something that's going to be week to week with him. We mentioned them bringing in Jason Pierre-Paul. I'm not too excited about that. The one thing I would say is I do think it's not a great sign that they brought him in terms of where Peyton Turner is at in his recovery. He's been out all year. I don't think they would have signed Jason Pierre-Paul if Peyton Turner were close to getting back. And we've asked Dennis Allen about that, and he's maintained kind of a vague answer. Yeah, he's doing better. He's coming along, but we don't really get a timeline. But I don't think they would have signed JPP if Peyton Turner were close to coming back.
And then we made some changes at wide receiver as well.
Yeah, well, they brought back Keith Kirkwood, and that's probably in response to Mike Thomas's injury. Keith Kirkwood plays the X position, and that's a position where, he's going to have to be a blocker and run the X. Same thing A.T. Perry's doing right now, the young rookie who had a great game. I think that's an encouraging development. The way he played in that game against the Vikings gives you hope for the future, a 7th-round draft pick that can make big-time plays like that.
Yeah, you were actually high on him during training camp. You liked what you saw, didn't you?
Well, he's like 6'5", 6'6". I mean, he's a big, tall receiver, can run. I can see why they like him. So that's encouraging. That the rookie class, frankly, has not been all that impactful this year. I mean, Brian Brazee's kind of leveled off, hasn't made a lot of plays at defensive tackle. Jordan Howden, I think, is a bright prospect at safety, but really there's been no impact from the rookie class. Even the kickers, the kicker and punter had their ups and downs. Kendre Miller has not been able to stay healthy, hasn't made much of an impact at running back. So to see A.T. Perry get on the field, make that big-time touchdown catch when the Saints had to have it, I mean, that was obviously a bright spot.
It was interesting, actually, on that particular play, watching an assessment of the kind of ball that Jameis had to throw to get it to him, and how many yards it traveled. I can't remember the exact number of yards, but it was a hell of a play.
Yeah, and that's what you get. I've said this before. That's what you get with Jameis Winston. I mean, I tweeted out after the game, that was the Jameis Winston experience, right? I mean, 2 unbelievable touchdown throws, and then just a couple of really head scratchers where they got through interceptions. That's Jameis Winston. And then that inconsistency is why I think it's prevented him from getting a starting job in the league, because you just can't live that way. You can't live, down to down, series to series, not knowing what you're going to get. But in a situation like that, where they were down 24-3 and they just had to go for broke, he can bring a spark to your team.
I think one of if you just think about an enduring core value of the Saints organization, they have a lot of stability with Dennis and Mickey and and of course the coaching staff, many of whom have been with the team for a long time. The enduring core value of the team is they're incredibly loyal. Does that actually play against them, though, when it's time to make changes?
Well, they think it's a strength. They look at it the exact opposite. They think teams around the league do too much of swimming in circles, making changes. And, so it just depends on who you talk. I personally believe there's a right time and, to make a move. And you have to know when that right time is. In the past, they were criticized, if you think about it, Ricky, from the Pelicans organization, where they really stuck with Dell Demps, the general manager, for probably a year or two longer than most fans wanted. And that set that organization back. The rebuilding of that organization took them a few more years to get it going in the right direction. So you could make arguments either way, I think. I do think in general, you're better off going with stability like the Steelers and some of those organizations. But you have to have the right people in place, and you got to know when they're not the right people and when to move on.
Anything else about the Saints? I have a Pelicans question to ask you.
No, look, we're doing all of our midseason updates right now, report cards, grades, kind of all of our analysis on the team. So you can check that out at NOLA.com. Be a lot of, opinion, if you will. And then, we'll get ready for this big game next week. It doesn't get any bigger next week than Falcons Saints.
So listen, Jeff, I've been watching Pelicans closely, and I think that my read on the way they're moving the ball around a lot, and by doing that, they're creating a bit of a dilemma for Zion, and he's trying to work through that, is that they haven't had Zion past January and maybe his entire career with the Pelicans. And so you've got a situation where they don't want to continue to feed him the ball and then lose him and then not have the continuity on the team. So they're spreading it around. They're the stars. There are numerous stars on the teams besides Zion, but it is Zion's team. What's your read on what they're doing and how Zion's reading it?
Well, I think it's a work in progress pretty clearly, right? I mean, James Borrego was brought in by Willie Green and David Griffin to kind of fix the offense and to build this offense around Zion Williamson. And look, he's only had him for 10 games, so it's going to take a little time. They've had a bunch of injuries as usual early in the year. So that's kind of exacerbated the problem of synchronizing this offense with all the moving parts that they have. I mean, they're still missing C.J. McCollum and Trey Murphy, and Jose Alvarado. Those are three of their top 8 players for sure. So I think it's going to continue to be this way. It was a nice win the other night against the Mavericks, but I want to see them stack some wins together. 5-5, I think, is disappointing considering the schedule they played. It's been pretty user-friendly so far.
What was interesting in heading up to the Dallas game is you saw the headlines around Zion trying to understand what his role is and all that junk that was being written. And then he goes to that game and dominates. And in fact, it was interesting looking at some of the headlines coming out of Dallas that Luka was under a lot of pressure because he really didn't have an answer to it, which shows that when Zion's on his game, he's hard to defend.
Oh, he's impossible to defend. I mean, there's just not too many cats, 6'6", 280 pounds that are that quick. I mean, I've had people tell me, Ricky, he's quick for a quick guy. In other words, like he's quick for a 6-foot point guard. So when you combine his physical nature, his size with that quickness and that explosiveness to the rim, and he's only going to get better. Look, he's the first to admit he's not in great shape right now. He needs to get in better shape. I think by playing every night, that's going to take care of itself. And I think he's just going to continue to get better and better.
How's he holding up physically?
Well, he's fine, I think. I mean, they need, there's a lot of pressure on them to make this work with Zion Williamson. I mean, it's been disappointing. It's hard to believe we're in year 5 right now, him and Brandon Ingram, and they've yet to really make their mark on the league. So there's a lot of pressure on the organization from the top down to not only get to the playoffs, but also make some progress in the playoffs, get beyond the first round to keep this fan base excited.
You think with these 3 injuries that you talked about that we'll get them back relatively soon, and they can start to get their continuity back as they enter some of the important parts of their season? Yeah,
I definitely think C.J. McCollum's going to be back soon. That's huge. He was playing great when he had to go out with that collapsed lung, and then Trey Murphy's going to be a little while. I don't think he's going to get in the lineup probably till the end of the season. I mean, end of the calendar year. Jose Alvarado ought to be back. And look, I was with Joel Myers last night, the play-by-play announcer, and he's very excited about what the talent and potential of this lineup could be. Very excited about the rookie, Jordan Hawkins, who's a sharpshooter from outside, has really lit up their offense. I mean, I think he might be better than they even thought. So that's another positive development.
Yeah, man, when he's got a great touch on the ball, doesn't he?
Yeah, and quick trigger. Get that. You have to have a quick trigger to be able to get it off in the NBA with the length that these defenders have. And Joel made the comparison to Ray Allen last night. Now, we're 10 games into his career. Ray Allen's a Hall of Famer, but very positive early signs from Jordan Hawkins.
And the other thing you want to see, not only do you have a great young talent there, but you want to see the chemistry with the team. And again, going back to the Dallas game, it was great to see what they're capable of doing with this bunch. And then to just think, adding 3 more good stars to that mix, the potential is really significant.
Well, the depth is there. They're going to be 10 deep when those guys all get back. I think the key is going to be just how do these top 2 stars, Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, how far can they take this team? It really comes down, it's a star-driven lead, Ricky. And Zion Williamson's got to become the guy that everybody expects and hopes he can be. He's a difference maker. It's really his team. I think it all comes down to putting on his shoulders.
Listen, Jeff, it's been great to catch up with you, my friend. I want to encourage people to sign up for the NOLA.com Saints newsletter. Is terrific. Get it every single day. They brought on a new beat writer, Matthew Paris. Is that, if I remember his name correctly? Yeah. We'll chat about how the team's coming together. But you guys, while other organizations are losing resources, you guys are gaining resources and doing such a great job covering the Saints. So keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you much, Ricky. We'll talk next week, bud.
You bet. This has been Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. When we come back, we have Richard Cross from the SuperTalk Sports Group. We'll see you after this.